How
about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, we like that street.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's that they did an amazing job
Really did.
on the
Really
architecture.
did.
Yeah.
We're very lucky to have it there.
Yeah. Nothing but junk mail.
It's kind of what.
Although, some of the, we don't back up to it, but other people do back up right up to it. And
It's so hard to.
you have to adjust to the fact that it's a middle school.
Yeah.
They're loud.
Okay, but we went live. Yes.
So you
And then
live,
the traffic associated with
This is
drop-off
stuff is
and
clearly
drop-off and
not-
pickup, that's kind of been.
This still let us go live.
yeah,
It's inevitable.
into my street, turn around there and sit there and wait.
like to call to order the City of Warr Acres Regular Planning Commission meeting for October the 11th, 2022. It does appear that we have a quorum. Thank everybody for showing up tonight. And let's go ahead and do our flag salute.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our first order is the minutes from July 12th, 2022. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have a recommendation for a correction
Okay, do we,
on the first page.
all right, do we need to open it for discussion?
I thought
No?
you just did.
It's okay.
You-
Okay.
You already brought it up,
Yep.
okay? On the first page of 13, it says absent. City attorney wasn't here,
Did I not put him down as absent?
not on mine.
Well, it would have been copies of all of them. Okay, I'll fix it.
The reason I think it's important, in the future, we may need to reference.
Right,
That
I'll,
way.
I'll fix it.
Okay. That's the only thing. Other than that, make a recommendation to be approved as written.
Somebody want to second that?
Second.
Adams? We voting to approve the minutes?
What?
Voting to approve the minutes?
I approve.
Corey?
Yes.
Curl?
Yes.
Downs?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Plumtree?
Yes.
Spriggs?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public hearing. Use subject to review, discussion, and possible action to make recommendation to the city council for approval or disapproval concerning type B home occupation for storing blocks and trucks, a landscaping business located at 5515 North MacArthur Boulevard in Warr Acres. The applicant is Rodolfo Esperaz. Is that correct? Yes. Take a motion to open it up for discussion.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Seconded.
Okay, first thing we want to, oh, sorry, you got to vote. Yeah.
All right. Adams?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Curl?
Yes.
Downs? Johnson?
Yes.
Plumtree?
Yes.
Spriggs?
Yes?
Motion passed.
Okay, first thing we want to discuss is the code violation at this location.
Any type B business has to come to planning commission and city council. Now, this one's also in the town center, and I believe I got some residents here wanting to express their opinion. I had one complain, I think he's actually here today, but they've had trucks out there blocking the street. That's what kind of started this. The police had called the code enforcement person, and they all took pictures. I think you have pictures in your packet,
Right.
and a timeline, actually, that what has occurred. And this is what transpired on that. Type B business is really, has to come to the planning commission and then city council.
Okay. And Mark, would you like to speak to this type B business?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I would like to note that if you refer to your, either your zoning map or your town center map, this address is located within the frontage of MacArthur and is within the town center overlay. And if you look back into the ordinance and the wording of town center on the overlay, the intent was to encourage the improvement of existing structures, primarily the residential structures, to if they were going to then operate as businesses or change their use, as a business within that and alter it, then it would be either improved, remodeled, or reconstructed to meet more of a commercial look to help to facilitate the removal of the residential homes being doubled up as businesses. You've had about 4 or 5 applications along MacArthur within town center. Most of them have done either major conversions or they have decided not to convert those residential homes to a business because of the cost it would take to try to alter that house to become more of a commercial building. You've also had about half a dozen that have removed the houses and then have built back commercial businesses, which is what we're encouraging in town center.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mark, may I ask, I'm sorry.
No, you, go ahead.
That is currently zoned R1, is that correct? Even
That-
though it's in the town center?
That is correct.
I knew that.
It has the overlay
Put it on the record.
of town center, but it is an R1.
Thank you.
The technical zoning would be TCR1, since it's within the overlay district, it's town center R1.
Thank you.
And it is occupied as a house, I believe, so.
Yes, the reason I asked, because I wanted that on the record, to make sure we knew what we were talking about. If nobody else wants to talk on this, I'll start off with it. It is an R1 in a residential area there. We recently did a place over, this commission did a place over on State Street, very similar. Construction equipment, storage, automated equipment, and we did not approve that because of the protest in the neighborhood and because of the dirt and the mess that would make. So what is it, was it not on State Street?
It was on Grove.
On Grove, I'm sorry. I was thinking State Street. It was on Grove. So, this is a similar application, and I think it's even worse than the one we, denied before, and as to where it's located. Secondly, this commission spent 6 years developing the town center for a purpose, and that was to do away with converting houses over to businesses to keep it looking like some of the southwest part of Oklahoma City on some of those streets on 44th and 59th and what have you, other places, even on our own street here on MacArthur. We did it in mind to encourage development of larger land uses and developers to come to the city with a 25-year plan ahead of time. Twice we've broke that scheme. Once was on West 50th Street, which, as you all know, it didn't work. The guy could not develop that piece of property like he wanted. That was a 3-year process that we had to go through. Recently, we did the place on just east of MacArthur on 50th Street, and my objection was it wasn't the required 120-foot lot. That's not the case here. And I objected to it because of the dust, the dirt, the noise, and the people who signed the petition. And main reason I objected to it because it made a small lot right in the middle of what could be a great commercial area. So that's a future problem that might present an expansion of a large development, or somebody that just can't get in there because that little wedge is stuck in there and 80 foot wide. But back to this piece of problem, his driveway doesn't meet the standards like he's got it now for a commercial driveway. He's trying to unload trucks, large trucks, semi-trucks and stuff, sitting out in MacArthur blocking the MacArthur traffic, and it blocks it north and south when they're using a forklift and the truck's parked sideways and the forklift's got to get there. I've been by there when that's happened a couple of times. As you see in your packet, our city inspection department made excellent pictures, some of the best we've had in the past, and you can see the dirt and the trash in the street. The overhead shows the backyard the same way. Again, we don't allow backyards to be stored with things like the guy that wanted to do a washing machine and dryer business and 30 and 40 washing machines and stuff. It's a place for rodents and et cetera to infest in and then infest the neighborhood. Same way with here with outside storage of materials and like this. They sit there for months and months at a time. The trash gets piled up there. The whole thing's negative as far as I'm concerned on the use of this piece of property. And I'm sure the gentleman lives, I'm assuming the report shows he lives on 107th Street in North Yukon, and I'll bet you money he wouldn't want this next door to his property there if he's living there. And the people there in that area don't want that there, the noise or anything else. Plus, the big problem being a traffic hazard there. That's the way I see it. So that's how I feel about it. I don't think we ought to approve it in any way, shape, or form. And the storage of that outside material should not be allowed in that area at all, just like we did with the other guys. That's how I feel about it.
Okay. Does anybody else want to talk to it?
I'd like to agree with Mr. Curl on this situation where the owner does appear to live in Yukon and has somewhat of a business running out of a residential location here in our city and is blocking traffic as well. And that if he wants to start up and run a commercial business in our town center area, then he should probably follow along with the rules and proceed with, turning this into a commercial property where deliveries can be made in a driveway with a commercial type application, rather than blocking the streets off and causing traffic issues during the day.
One of the things I was gonna bring up, it comes back for rezoning. This is a perfect example in the town center of doing spot zonings right in the middle of an area. It blocks off, it's kind of like the place I described earlier we did last month, or last time. It's kind of a virus, so to speak, here in the COVID area that you inject something in there in the spot zoning area and that blocks development of real good use of properties. And we're talking about your city tax base and future development here. Again, that was planned out for 25 years in advance. Hopefully, we were looking far enough in future, and we've already used up, 7 or 8 years of that already. So
Okay.
I don't feel like this fits, but Mr. Chairman, if none of the other commissioners want to talk, you let the applicant make a statement if you'd like.
Yes, sir, thank you.
I think we also got some people that want to say some stuff too.
We'll let the applicant talk, and then we'll let them talk after that, and if he wants to say anything after they speak, then we'll go back to him. Mr. Esperanza, would you like to come up and speak about your business that you have there?
Just describe it or what?
Yeah, if you'll come up here and,
If you'll say your name and your address so that we can put it in our minutes.
My name is Ricardo Esparza. I'm Rodolfo Esparza's son. And what else did you say to?
Just an address, so for the record.
10615 North was 107th Street, Yukon. And you said just to mention about the business?
Talk about your application. What are you applying for here? What do you want?
Just applying to keep materials there and trucks, and, you know, if we need to make any changes, like not have anything delivered, or, you know, make a change to a driveway, which we won't be bringing any more materials if, you know, does happen to get approved. You know, and if anybody's got any other suggestions to make it pass, besides tearing down the house, you know, we'd be more than willing to listen to it.
So who lives there right now?
They're tenants.
And how many tenants live there right now?
It's a family of, I don't know, I think they have a daughter.
Okay. And I'm guessing the lease you have with them allows you guys to store stuff on the property, or?
Yes.
Okay. If you couldn't store anything outside the property, well, maybe a better question would be, what are you proposing in terms of the commercial use of this property? What are you wanting to be able to do at the property?
Basically just keep, as far as materials, we don't really need to keep materials there. Just keeping trucks there and machinery that, you know, like skid steers. And that would be it. I mean, we don't really need to keep materials there. We can take that elsewhere.
And where would you store the equipment, machinery, and whatnot?
There in the yard.
In the front yard?
No, but in the back.
Okay.
How long have you owned that property?
Maybe 19 years.
That's what I thought, because when you first bought it, you really improved the looks of the property, did a magnificent job on that driveway out there. In fact, that was I've seen that type of drive before, and you did that all by hand. I thought it was excellent, and it still looks good even to today. But the use of that property now, to use it for what you're using, just doesn't fly right. Even as Commissioner said, even if you follow the rules and come back for what I call it's actually called a spot zoning in there, where you don't fit with anything, and it puts a dead block on development of better places that, well, I'm not investing money as long as a junkyard's there or a storage yard, et cetera. That's why I would object to it.
Understand.
So I'm just letting you know where I stand on it, because we have thought long and hard for years to try to get development encouraged here. It's our plan to hopefully get it encouraged, but if we chop it all up in pieces, it's not gonna work.
I understand.
That's my opinion.
How often are trucks, are you guys picking up trucks and dropping trucks off and stuff?
We just park there in the morning and then in the afternoon, probably like Monday through Saturday. And as far as the materials, honestly, this is the year that we started doing the Delisa trucks, you know, and I completely understand having an issue with it. That's why we stopped doing this as soon as we got that. And like I said, as far as materials, we don't have to keep materials there.
What kind of trucks are we talking?
Just pickup trucks, regular trucks.
Not heavy trucks?
No.
How many employees you got?
How many what?
Employees you got that come to the house?
Well, it's 7.
If you have skid steers there, are you transporting those skid steers with pickup trucks
In trailers?
on trailers?
Yes.
So the trailers and skid steers will be stored there?
Yes, I think there's about 3 trailers.
Out of curiosity, how long have you been using the property to store equipment, trucks, et cetera?
5 years. Like 6 years, that we got more equipment. Before I just want to try to pick up, that's it. Yeah, now we've got more. Yeah, now that it's more people, we've got more equipment.
And what is I mean, you're storing stuff there, but what is the nature of the business? I mean, I'm assuming you take it to go do jobs.
Yeah, we take it there.
What kind
We
of-
build retaining walls and patios. So it's mostly bricks and blocks.
And as I understand it, this does not meet the type A, correct? If they're storing machinery there?
Well, and I was going to talk about that when we close the public hearing, but this is that delicate balance between being able to have, I mean, the concept of a home occupation is being stretched a little bit here. The idea was that the person who's living at the house is the one that is storing stuff. So if they live there, this would be a lot more like some of the other applications that we've seen in the past, where the person lives there, they have a business, they store their stuff there because you have to go home somewhere at night. This is a little bit different because this letter of the law versus spirit of the law, it clearly does not meet the spirit of the law, which was, whether it's owner occupied or somebody who's renting it, but they live there, they have their business, whether they, we give examples in the ordinance of things like, a beautician, where somebody will come to your house, you do the thing, and then they leave. We've had CPAs before, where, they come to your house, then they leave, but you live there. I mean, you're doing their taxes in your living room. One that we had several of when I first got here, and then we haven't had them for a while, thank goodness, were daycare homes, where somebody lives at their home and kids get dropped off, they get picked up. I had a question about whether or not anybody was living there, because if nobody was living there, then it clearly would not be a residential use, where the home occupation is what the code describes as a clearly incidental or secondary use of the premises, where the primary use is that of residential. They have tenants there, okay, so it's being used as residential. This wasn't the intent of the ordinance. The intent was that it be people who are living there.
Would own the business.
Well, and actually, I'm wrong. It's not just the spirit of the law, it's the letter of the law. People employed in a home occupation shall reside within a dwelling on the property. And so unless the tenants are working for the business, then this doesn't meet the definition of a home occupation. I was focused on the machinery and equipment part, but so are any of the tenants employed by the business?
No.
So that actually would take care of that. I mean, they could still apply for it. They cannot use it for this purpose unless an employee or owner of the business is residing at the property. So, I mean, they can move forward with the application, but they can't actually use it for this purpose unless somebody that's working for the business resides on premises.
Okay. And in order to meet a type B, they would have to take the house down and put up a more commercial building, or
That I
modify
disagree.
the house.
That I disagree with, only in as much as, and this is again, I agree with Mark on the spirit of the law. 19.43.060, which is your town center ordinances, say that no existing residential structure within the TCCC district shall be converted to a non-residential use. If this were a true home occupation, it would be a residential use. It would be a secondary incidental use of the residential property, but it would stay residential. If this was going to a traditional commercial use, non-residential use, then yes, it would have to be converted from a residential structure to a commercial structure.
Okay.
And I mean, this does, in a way, meet the letter of the law here, which is if you want to have this piece of property, which is a 120 by, if I count it right, 280 property, the whole point of the town center district was promote mixed-use development. Now, I'm not sure what a proposal would look like to have this property used for a hybrid on-premises residential unconnected to business storage, but you could apply for an SPUD. That would then allow for mixed use, not home occupation, but we'd like a certain portion of the property be used for residential, a certain portion be used for commercial. And then we'd get into the issue of conversion of residential structures. Is it really conversion if the part that's being used for residential is a residential structure? All sorts of discussions about that.
Okay.
And you would have the site development
Yes.
requirements. So if you went the SPUD route and they were going to conduct this as a commercial business, which basically it would be a yard, then we would have to, they would be subject to a site plan. They'd have to meet the commercial driveway standards. They have to be able to meet all of the civil site requirements that the ordinances carry.
Okay,
But, Mr. Chairman, as it stands right now, the property is not, I mean, you can always apply for a use that you haven't yet engaged in, or to come back and ask for a use that you've engaged in but didn't know it was against the ordinances. As it stands right now, this doesn't meet the definition of a home occupation.
Okay.
So if it's going to continue as is, they can apply for it, they can get permission, but as long as nobody's living at the residence that works for the business, it cannot be used for any commercial activity.
okay.
So you can still go forward with it. And so if you wanted to move into it, into that house as the resident, then it would be a different discussion.
Right.
But since it's a residential property that's separate and apart from who the tenants are, is also being used for storage for the business, that's not going to work as a home occupation.
Okay.
Anything else?
Do you have any more questions, Mr. Esparza? Okay. Then we'd like to hear from residents around the property. If anybody wants to come forward.
And you'll have a chance to come up and respond to anything they might say. But
And if they have responses you want to respond to, then
Oh.
you'll have a second chance to come back up and speak.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
same thing as before, if you'll just introduce yourself, name, address.
My name is Harold Briggs. I live at 5902 Northwest 56th Street. My house is adjacent to theirs. The back side of their property butts up to the east side of my property. The issue that I have is runoff from their property. They graded the property recently, 3 years ago maybe, and anytime we get heavy rain, their property has some kind of a rocks or something. It's red rock, and it just fills into my yard, and I have tons of red water running into my yard and into my neighbor's yard. That area is low and it pools, and so it's damaging my grass, it's damaging my neighbor's grass. I have a garden, and it's the water's running next to my garden. And just recently, with this last rain, end of August, I believe it was, there was oil slick running into my property. So I just have issue with that. There's also noise at about 6:30, 7 in the morning. We start hearing machinery banging, all that stuff. So it's a bit of a nuisance. So that's my feelings. What you decide is,
So you're saying there's an EPA hazard there with stuff running over?
I called the DEQ. They came out and did a test, but it had dried up. There was no heavy oil, so they dismissed it. But I have photos of the runoff where there's oil slick coming from under the
So there's a ground
fence.
contamination already
A
started?
little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have animals too, and when I was out there taking photos, the dogs were playing in it and they were drinking that water. I can't stop that. That's just, so it's hazardous to my dog's health.
That, maybe you know, or you can answer. Isn't that a 1 acre piece of property? Is that 1 acre? That's what I thought, it was 1 acre. It's 300 foot deep, is that correct? Roughly? Something like that. So it's a big piece of, fairly big piece of property. Okay. I thought that we ought to bring that up and let you know what size we're talking about. We're not talking about a city lot here. And his property
It's an acre lot.
is, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your first name.
Harold, Harold.
I have two comments based on that. Comment number one is home occupation by definition cannot have any mechanical equipment used or activity conducted which creates any noise, dust, odor, or electrical disturbance beyond the confines of the lot. So no activity conducted which creates any noise beyond the confines of the lot. is one of the comments. Second comment is I just now was able to pull up the aerial, and what concerns me from an ordinance standpoint, a home occupation is not supposed to change the character of the property. What I'm seeing on the aerial is it appears that the house has a segregated backyard, and then the back portion of the lot is separately, essentially used for the storage of somebody completely unrelated to the residential property itself. And so, I mean, you do have essentially a lot that's now been physically divided, if not legally divided, to create a commercial storage on half the lot and a residential property on the other half, which is not a incidental secondary use of the property.
Yeah. The reason I was familiar with that, of course, I'm familiar with the property, but back when I was just a kid, under 10 years old, my aunt used to own the house at 5509, which is the same size property. So I was familiar with that property like that. I've been around a little while.
That house has been in our family for 55 years or so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my father's Danny Briggs. I don't know if you knew him, but.
Barry, to answer your question, it looks like it's a 280 deep lot by 120.
280?
Yeah,
It's
the
about,
lots that front, 58th and 54th, 56 are all 300 deep by 131 foot, but the lots that front MacArthur are 120 wide by 280 deep.
it's
Why was
.77
it?
per the assessor. So
It sounds like it's just over 3/4 of an acre,
Oh, 3/4.
just over.
Thank you. So how wide is it?
120 wide by 280 deep,
That's what I thought, 120.
according to the plat.
When we were trying to establish what would be a good distance to get away from those 25, 50, and 75-foot lots, that's why we came up looking on North MacArthur and averaging it out. You could get 2 lots where it was too small and make 120, so these lots were 120, so that's where we came up with that
For
120.
the SPUD.
Huh?
For the SPUD.
Yes.
Yeah, so it would meet the criteria for an SPUD if applied for, because it is wide enough.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, is anybody else here to speak to this item on the agenda? If you would, sir, go ahead and state your name and your address.
I'm Randy Diver. I live at 5509 North MacArthur. I'm the house is south of them. I've been there for 30 years almost. They've been in there for, like you said, 19. It's been at least 15 years they've been banging around back there in the backyard. The skid steers load the trailers probably at 6 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes they just throw the bricks in the trailers.
Can you use the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just get it, there you go.
They've been doing it for quite a while. It hasn't been just 5 or 6 years.
Where did you live from the property?
5509,
Oh, you're in,
yeah,
I think that's where my aunt lived.
probably was.
Does anybody have any questions for him?
I don't. This gentleman and the other guy pretty well confirmed what we suspicioned.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
While we're on the subject, I would like to give the city code enforcer an atta boy or atta girl, whatever you call it, for the pictures she has provided for us. They're excellent. They're really good. And hopefully we can keep that up.
That would be Cheryl White. She's code enforcement.
Yeah, she did a good job.
Stand up, take a bow.
She is here.
Oh, is she here? Oh, she's back there. I didn't see her. She's hiding back there. I didn't know you were here.
So I would like to, I don't want to dismiss the fact that if we have a commercial business in town center or something of that effect, these residents that live in that area, they are going to be prone to having a somewhat commercial business next to them. Is that correct?
Yes, but, and Mark highlighted this earlier, the way the town center was structured is we knew that we had some businesses that moved into residential properties. That was one of the concerns. Anybody remember, what was it, the purple polka dot house that ended up turning into the Snap Fitness? So that was one of the concerns, is conversion of residential property. One of the observations, recognitions by the commission and the council was that if there was going to be redevelopment along 50th or MacArthur, there would be some growing pains. The idea behind the town center was to proactively promote redevelopment, commercial redevelopment, potential mixed-use redevelopment, and that there would be some times where some of the properties would turn over, come in, apply, get approved, and you'd have some businesses next to residential. The difference is it was designed to have a thorough review process to try and make sure that we mitigated the risk to the adjacent property owners.
Okay.
Honestly, what I'm seeing here is an unlawful occupation that's going on in residential property where the property has essentially been divided into two, not legally, but physically, with a commercial activity going on that's completely unrelated to the residential. That is not a home occupation. This is still zoned residential. It's not half the property, a little less than half the property is being used for residential. The rest is being used for purely a commercial use that's not permitted under the zoning code. While somebody can come in, the owner can certainly come in to apply for a home occupation, one of the criteria is going to have to be that somebody associated with the business lives there. That's not occurring.
Right.
They're going to have to be, they can't use it in a way that would disturb the residents surrounding them, whether that's noise disruption, dust. I've got the ordinance pulled up here. Specifically contemplated in the code is that you not engage in any activity related to the business that creates noise, that creates dust, that creates odor, that creates any sort of electrical disturbance that goes outside the confines of your property. You can have machinery and trucks and whatnot, but you can't have it in a way that calls attention to the business. It's essentially, think of a home occupation as sort of a zero impact business that if you didn't know what was going on, you wouldn't know. Unless you were a neighbor that just happened to know the owner and know what was going on. If you just moved in across the street, it might take you a while to figure out that somebody was actually making a living across the street. That's the idea behind a home occupation. It doesn't change the character of the property, of that community. And we've got the extreme examples of what it got to in the photos, and they've assured us that that part has ceased, but that doesn't change the fact you've heard some of the impact on some of the adjacent property owners here of a business that's not permitted. And so, honestly, as submitted to you right now, I could not, from a staff level, recommend that you consider it because it doesn't meet the criteria in the code. This is not a lawful home occupation. It's not a home occupation.
Does the fact that it's been going on for years without complaint make it more or less acceptable or grandfathered in?
No. So if the law had changed, if you get into your property and you start engaging in a use and then the government doesn't like it, they can come and change the law on you. But if they change the law on you and you've already established that use, then it becomes what we call legally non-conforming, or better way to put it is grandfathered. Because you were engaged in it lawfully at the time, they changed the law on you, that doesn't mean you have to change what you're doing. Same thing would happen if you rezone the property. If you rezone this tomorrow to commercial, they could continue to use it as residential because they've established that use. Now, if they ever abandon it, that's when you lose legal nonconformance. But the argument of, well, I've been breaking the law for so many years, somehow I should be allowed to do it. I promise you, Chief Patty's officers have heard people tell them in the past, well, I've gotten this, everybody goes this speed down the roadway. Well, that doesn't make it legal. It's still against the law. You can't do it. The fact is, this got brought to our attention, and as we look into it, we realize it's not a lawful use of the property. And these ordinances have been in place, honestly, most of them have been in place since Barry looked like me. I mean, really, I don't mean to be glib, but most of our zoning ordinances have been in place exactly as they are for a very, 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 very long time. And by the way, the town center aspect of this, is a bit of a red herring. It at least tells you the spirit of what we were trying to do. But this isn't a town center issue. This is an R1 issue.
Right. And I might add about the use, there are numerous businesses that are occupying residential structures.
In a
You
legally
have-
non-conforming
You
way.
have insurances, you have gift shops. In fact, several years ago, we had a dentist that was on MacArthur that came in and said, hey, I want to change the use. And, well, okay, you can change the use. And then they said, oh, well, we're going to occupy. I think they were going to have one of their dentists was going to live in it, and they were going to still run the dental practice. But then when they started looking at, well, let's convert it to another commercial use, that's fine. You're going to have to meet the commercial building code. So then they had to
Going to
try
have to come into compliance because
Right,
you were
and
legally
they-
non-conforming at the time, but
That's right.
the change triggered
Right.
coming into compliance.
And then that meant now you have steps, you've got to have ADA compliance, you have to have parking requirements. So it does not penalize residents that are living in a house next to there. It protects them by saying if we're going to allow a commercial business to come in, we're going to allow them to come in, but they're going to have to follow our commercial guidelines. So.
Do we have any more input from the audience before we close this?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Curl,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes?
Johnson,
Yes.
Plumtree,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Chairman, from a staff perspective, my recommendation to you would be that this particular application, given that it does not meet the ordinance criteria, should be recommended for denial. It does not mean that a future application could not come before you that would be compliant with the code, but this application is not, as submitted, compliant with the code.
Okay.
But before we make that motion, I agree with whatever he said because I couldn't hear him. When he's looking towards you, I can't hear
No,
him.
I understand. I got the same issue.
But,
I just don't wear them.
within 300 foot of this property, there was a home occupation that came in to this commission 3 or 4 years ago or something like that. I don't remember the exact time. And he actually built a building behind his house, had a gravel driveway, and wanted to put in a business where people came and went. I mean, we couldn't approve that kind of a thing. And the other thing is, in the town center, you have to have access to MacArthur. So if you own the lot, like the gentleman back here, he doesn't have access to MacArthur unless he owned this guy's lot, then he would, you know. So that was one of the ways we put a restrictive area. You just didn't want a spot zone. If you lived in the one just round the corner, you couldn't do it unless you owned the corner one, and that gave you access. And that's already come up on 52nd or where that guy wanted to build the print shop because he wanted to park off-street parking, which was not allowed, and he didn't have room for a parking lot. So we've already reviewed some of this on applications. But the one with the barber shop, the guy just didn't understand why he couldn't do that. And he didn't have room for a parking lot or anything. I just bringing up that point to you that home occupation does occur in places. One I can remember up on north side there, I wanted to say it was in Two Lakes, but it was next to Two Lakes. There was a doctor, and he worked one child at a time, you know, I forget his credentials, but only one person at a time came to the house, one car, because the parent would bring him, you know, and nobody even knew he was there unless, and the reason he came to us one time, because he needed to make a little bit bigger driveway for the parent to park in. And he got his application and made a separate door so they didn't go through his house, you know. So that was good for a home occupation, and like the city planner said, there's been some others. Some of the worst ones, though, are child care centers in the middle of a residential area. And unfortunately, a few years ago, we approved one somewhere off 63rd up there, and city council approved it over the planning commission's recommendations, and it went back and forth between planning commission and city council a couple of times, and city council went ahead and approved it. And well, I won't get into that, but I will say later there was a tragedy at that child care center. So it didn't really work well in that neighborhood either. So the other problem, we had a bunch of protesting people, and in fact, at the old city hall down there, it was jam-packed with people. So,
With that
so
said,
that
Mr.
stuff
Carroll,
comes up.
that history lesson of past, would you like to go ahead and make a recommendation?
Maybe somebody else wants to talk.
Motion to recommend denial.
Second.
Okay,
Was there a motion made?
Yes.
Recommend denial.
Oh, okay. Based on what the city attorney recommended, is that right?
That and the, yeah, I mean, all the rest of the evidence we just heard, yeah.
But basically, like he legally.
Does not-
Oh, yeah.
And Barry, what I was saying is, I wanted to make sure that it was clear, we're not saying no home occupation ever, just this application.
This
This
application only.
application, yes, but that's what I'm getting at. Was there a second?
Yes.
There was.
Okay.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Curl,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Plumtree,
Yes.
Spriggs.
Yes,
Okay, motion passed to deny.
This application, along with the next two, no matter what happens on them, will be on the city council's agenda for next Tuesday, this room at 6 o'clock, not 7 o'clock. So you'll need to be at city council next week at 6 o'clock.
if you want to come and speak to the city council at that time about it.
Well, you'll need to be there. If you don't show up, then your application's deemed withdrawn. If you do show up, then the city council it'll be similar to this, a public hearing and a vote.
Okay, next item on the agenda is subject to review, discussion, and possible action to make recommendation to city council concerning a lot split located at 5430 Northwest 42nd Street in Warr Acres. The applicant is Gabriel Flores. Take a motion to open this up.
Hold on. Is the applicant here?
Yes, the applicant is here.
Just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Take a motion to go ahead and open this for public hearing.
I move to open.
Second.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Curl,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Plumtree,
Yes.
Spriggs.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Mr. Chairman, is the applicant here?
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Okay.
If y'all don't mind coming up.
Mr. Chairman, I might be able to give a little bit of clarification, and then you can hear from the applicant,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
yes, that'd be great.
This application is, I believe, a good attempt at getting us out of an undesirable situation. If you go to your actual packet, there's two addresses that will be listed as part of the lot split, 5430 Northwest 42nd Street and 5436 Northwest 42nd Street. If you'll flip to your first plot plan drawing, that's the first drawing, as you can see on the situation with 42nd Street and State Street, there are actually 3 homes located on what is considered by Oklahoma County as a single lot. It is one property with 3 structures on it.
But It's not really.
but it's not really. So what we are doing with the applicant has been very patient in working through this process and we've worked with their surveyors, and what they will be doing is you have, according to the plat, we are going to be taking lots 1 and lots 2 of block 5 and splitting that from lots 3, 4, and 5. If you flip to the next page, you will see the end result will be a primary house structure with a secondary residential structure at the back on lots 1 and 2. And then the third drawing, if you flip to that, we will then have a single residential house with an out garage located with the driveway on lots 3, 4, and 5.
I want to help clarify one thing, because if you look at this, you might think that we're creating 5 lots.
Yes.
The Putnam City Edition, the plat for the Putnam City Edition, for whatever reason, I wasn't here at the time, maybe Barry can tell us. I think I know why it was done. The lots were all 150 foot deep and 25 wide. The reason I think that was done is because then it gave the developer a little more freedom. Oh, you want 100 feet of frontage? I'll sell you 100 feet. You want 125? I'll sell you 125. So by going ahead and platting them as 25-foot lots, none of them are actually being occupied as 25-foot wide lots. People bought chunks of lots. And so what you're actually really doing here is taking what is legally 5 lots that the county views as 1 because they're under common ownership, but they are legally 5 lots, and making 2. And so that's why when you see lot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's from the plat. Each of those is a 25-foot lot that, as platted back in, good gracious, let me see if I can find the,
1946?
6, yeah.
I mean, that'd be a good guess.
yeah, I was trying to see if I could find it on here, but
This is a layout. Almost all of the original Warr Acres is like this, those 25-foot lots.
Okay.
you got to keep going back a ways. Try 1909,
Ooh, wow.
at least according to this.
Okay.
Yeah, 1909. 24th day of December of AD. Haven't seen AD in a date in a while. 1909.
That's pretty cool.
Which, by the way, puts it as the Putnam City addition to Oklahoma City and not Warr Acres, since Warr Acres did not exist at that time.
Yeah.
So I wanted to clarify that when I was looking this up earlier today to get ready for the meeting, was trying to figure out why on the assessor's page as well, it had all the different lot numbers, pulled up the plat, and reminded myself that, yeah, the Putnam City, you've got a lot of homes in there and lots the county thinks are lots that are technically 3, 4, or 5 legal lots that are all under common ownership.
So the garage that's drawn on here belongs on State Street, right?
Well, the garage,
42nd?
the garage will access off of the driveway on 42nd Street
42nd, yes.
along the west side of the residence.
And so they're going, when they resurvey this, they're gonna have to have a piece of lot 2 there, right?
Okay, so if you look at the second drawing, and it shows the single house at the corner of State and there, you're gonna see that they have now done a boundary. They've done a new boundary survey, and they've created a new lot that encompasses the house and then the secondary residence on that. The garage remains with the house to the east. So if you look at the third drawing, that the garage will remain on this new lot with the new legal description, which will supersede all of the previous legal descriptions that have been very confused for the last 40 years.
Okay, next question, I understand where the other 2 houses are. Is that being split?
No, No, so what they will be doing, and I'll let the applicant discuss their plans, they will be looking at renovation of all three of these structures. They will just be keeping the one primary house that's off of 42nd, and then this other will be like a secondary structure to that house.
Okay.
What kind of shape is the
Close.
garage in? That's technically on lot 3.
The
Is it
garage.
a 1909 or 1940s type?
Yes, and I'll
Over-
let the applicant, they have some plans for that, and that would probably be better for them to discuss their renovations.
And Mark, as part of that, one question I've got specific to the garage would be setbacks. Because obviously it's going to be, the current garage, I don't know what the future plans are, but the current garage would be right up to the lot line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it does not meet our setback requirements, so,
It'd be a 0 lot line there.
yes.
Is that right?
It's, gotta be 6 foot?
What?
Mike
one
or
of-
Mike, do you recall?
I think you had, I think,
It's gotta be 10 feet from the back.
right, so I think you guys had talked about you were gonna demolish that garage, is that right?
He wasn't sure yet.
Okay.
He was thinking, it's in medium condition, it needs some repair, it is older. He's worked on the houses so far, he hasn't made it to the garage, but he thinks it's savable, so he wanted to see if he could, put some money into it and make it to where it could be used.
But when we discuss this, that structure is not, if you as a policy body say, remove the garage, that's not going to be something they would object to.
Correct.
In order to be able to do the bigger plan, which is to split the two.
If you remove the garage, would that change the way the layout is? Because it encompasses that garage, it moves over, would it be a straight lot line going up, or?
I think the issue would be the driveway to the back.
Right, the driveway is there. I mean, if you left it that way, then they would still have the ability to have that driveway. They could just construct some kind of a shed or an outbuilding or another garage. But in the building permit process, then they would have to meet
They have to meet the setback.
the setback requirement.
Okay.
Yes.
And that honestly is the only concern I've got on this is if approved and if we allow the garage to stay, you can make an argument for legal nonconformance since we created the new lot that the existing structure was within when the lot lines changed. That obviously, as long as it remains in place, could remain in place, but if there was any sort of major overhaul to it, that would be a problem.
Right.
Just a non-major overhaul, and not using legal terms here, but, I mean, you could paint the garage, obviously, you could stabilize it, but.
Right. Which, and that's from a staff perspective here, I mean, it is an existing structure. So if they did, like, let's say they did a total double the size or a complete renovation of it, then we would have a potential issue there.
He
So-
doesn't want to do that. If anything, he wants to paint it, stabilize it, update it, make it match the house since he's putting money into that, and give it a facelift, but not expand in any way, shape, or form. He's already put too much money into the properties.
So with that, I think they do have kind of a very good plan of what they're gonna do with these renovations, so.
I
Mark,
don't have a
last question.
problem with the garage problem, because the driveway's already there. So just wanted to establish that the side of that garage is a 0 lot line, so to speak, right?
Zero setback.
Zero setback, yes.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to establish, that on lot 1 and 2, there's gonna be 2 houses on that one lot?
That's correct.
That's correct. That's not allowed under our current city ordinances, but we're gonna allow that here. That one house, I understand, was built in 1980. I don't know how it got approved to build there, but it shouldn't have been.
That was why I said a less than desirable situation is that somehow it was allowed to have 3 structures placed on what the county represents as one contiguous piece of property. So,
Well, and the houses were built across lot lines, but they're under common ownership. And honestly, going back to the 1980, I don't know what our code would have said at that time.
Yeah.
But you would not be creating a new issue. You've already got the issue now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mark, the last observation I wanted to make, and see if you can confirm this, the lot line and the sort of L over, as I'm seeing from the aerial, essentially would be to take the, what I described in the last one is the physical separation that currently exists and actually make the lot line conform to it.
Correct.
Okay.
And that way, it was the I met with the applicant and we went through, this is the most logical way to get the properties to function the way they're functioning right now, so that they can then make these a usable residential situation.
I don't disagree with that at all. The other thing is, I don't want to perpetuate an agreement like we ended up on 58th Street that was overlooked for years. How many sewer lines do we have here and how are they connected?
Well, I mean, this is actually a little bit different than the 58th Street in that this is a area that has both sanitary sewer and water. Now,
But is there
the
one-
service lines would need to be running in the lots that we're creating.
Right.
Maybe you guys can, what he's talking about is he's talking about the sewer and the water connections from each of the structures. Are they going out to the street without crossing over?
I believe they are. We looked into it before he purchased the properties, and they each have their own address assigned, so they receive their own bill.
And I believe they all have three. They're all getting, there's three separate billings that are going on. So, Mr. Curl, if that was happening, then we would, in the other situation, we have one bill for multiple structures. So here we've got one bill for each structure.
The main concern, as it relates to the application, you don't know what we're talking about because it was a couple of months ago, taken to your property would be whether or not, if you've got your connection lines going to the essentially rear of the property, I mean, what would that be?
To the south.
Yeah, to the south. Then you'd have the potential of service lines crossing over lot lines and get into issues of do easements need to be granted? Because technically, if the house there on State, if its service line came over to the east and then down to the back property line, well, that'd create an issue because if you ever need the line worked on and they changed ownership, well, now you don't have a right to access the property to gain access to that service line. If they're heading out to the street, then it's a lot easier.
And I think that could be verified during a building permit process. So if they're remodeling it, we could verify the plumbing inspection on that to make sure that.
Mike, do you know in that area where our sewer main would run? Would it be, I mean, I think I see a manhole in the street there on State. Do we have a line running under State or?
I think it runs across State, so it'd be on the south property line running east to west.
So you'd have a potential issue then with that property at the northwest corner, the house at the northwest corner.
Yeah, it possibly could be running.
There is a sewer line on the north side of 42nd. You have to go underneath 42nd.
It looks to me like the house on the north side that he's referring to, that doesn't have a direct sewer connection.
Well, what I'm wondering, Barry, is if it's running across the back.
Yeah, it's running back there.
Back lot line, house probably connects here, house probably connects here. I don't know how that house would connect.
Yeah, but there are three separate accounts. So they've got three separate accounts already established.
Yeah, well,
46.
here at City Hall, so did the other place, but it wasn't right. So I just didn't want to perpetuate something
Yeah.
that, for the future, that's not correct here.
The only thing that I could see is that if when they're doing the permit for renovating the houses, having a plumber verify that each of the services for the water and the sewer are not crossing over
And I believe
or
we
tied to each
we
other.
looked
But
into that when we were when he was considering the purchase of the properties earlier this year, he wanted to know that because that was a concern if he ever decided to sell them in the future. He doesn't want to have that issue. And I believe, I'm not really sure who looked at the lot, do you recall?
I don't remember who we
But
talked to. I think-
we were
I think
told
he
it was
looked at
separate.
right? The lines?
He looked at the one on 58th.
Well, we talked about this one for months before that one.
Yep.
We were doing it all at the same time.
What do you want to know?
If you remember whether or not we were able to look up those lines for that particular property.
For the three
Well, it'd
separate
just be-
locations.
It'd just be the sewer mains, the two houses were built in 46, so at some time they were connected to when the system became available, so there's no maps between the houses and the sewer mains.
And we were under the impression that they are separate because they each have their own service. And based on that, he decided to proceed with the purchase, you know, because he thought, well, if they are
This
separate, then it
thinks
won't be
that
an
the
issue.
house- Trying to figure out which house was built in the 80s.
I think that
That
was,
would be
That's the one they want to split, was built in the
east one,
80s.
the big lot,
So the one that fronts 42nd.
right.
All right, so the two
The
houses
one
that
that
front
was
state.
split.
The other two are 46.
That one house fronts.
The two that front state were built in 46. The one that fronts 42nd is the newest house, yes.
So the one on the third drawing that you're looking at. The one that's sitting on the lots 3, 4, 5 from the plat was built in the 80s, yes.
I do have your email that you sent about these houses.
Well, here's the power pole is showing on here. Right there's a violation. The power going to that house cannot come across the other owner's property. Where it says power pole, that, you can't run the power to your house across somebody else's property, either OG&E or anything.
right.
Well, and that's, I'll let
Well,
the applicant, the applicant has spoken to OG&E. Once they have two separate addresses and this is fixed, then OG&E can then remedy the meter problem with OG&E, so.
Also, can't drop it over the top of that garage unless it's over 10 feet.
Again, I'm gonna defer to the applicant because there's quite a bit of work that they want to
Can we let the applicant go ahead and give us the overall plan? And
Sure, absolutely. The goal that Mr. Flores has with these houses, he purchased them with the intention to, his goal is to improve them, to make them better, which he has already started doing that. He wants to make them, you know, fit in better with the neighborhood, update them. Once he does that, depending on the result that we receive today, he is not sure if he's going to maybe lease some of them, two of them, or one of them and sell the other. But basically, that's his goal. He wants to make it better. And the garage, I know it's kind of confusing, but if you go to the properties, the garage being split like this makes sense because it aligns with the driveway. So if you drive in, you know, and so the other way it would face on the side. It just didn't, I know it maybe doesn't meet the criteria or whatnot, but he just purchased the houses. We didn't build them like this. He bought them with that goal. We did as much research as we could with utilities, sewer lines, all that. But we were told that it's grandfathered in or it's the way it was built, shouldn't be a problem getting a lot split. So that is basically his goal, to make the neighborhood better.
If they're separate lots, you're changing the grandfather on it. So it wouldn't be grandfathered in if they're separate lots and could end up being separate ownerships. And we're trying to prevent anything that would come up
Right.
and fall back on the city as a problem. And the sewer and the electrical problem are one of those. I have no idea about what the water is.
As far as we know, there isn't a sewer or water problem
How
from
many
the
water-
research that we've done with the city personnel and
You have
asking.
3 water meters or just one?
Three electric meters as well.
Yeah, that's good. But the electrical overhead services cannot run across anybody else's problem.
And I was told that that's something that OG&E has to remedy. That's not really up to us. It's their issue, and it's something that we can't control.
So, once the lot split is approved, then OG&E is able to come in, set another pole, and take
At
care
their
of the...
discretion, yes.
Yes, okay.
So I can say I've got myself and my aunt next door have a separate structure in our backyard. I have 2 meters. OG&E provides power to both structures. One is a little garage and a party house out in the backyard, and my aunt has a garage or shop for her lawnmower and to grow herbs and stuff in. And so we both have separate meters that OG&E came in, ran a separate pole, separate meter and everything too. So, and it was after the structure was built, so that will be something that will have to come after the fact.
Right. I was just trying to clarify
Oh, yeah.
that she has
No.
talked to OG&E, and
Yep.
they are
Right.
willing to come and do that.
Oh, I understand. The water meters and the sewer is definitely a positive on their part.
And another thing, another point that I think is important is the previous owner owned the property for a long time. I believe he built some of the properties on there. He had them successfully leased out for many, many years to long-term tenants. Maybe they didn't take care of the properties, as well as they should have, but overall, he never had any issues with billing or utility, anything like that. They were perfectly leased. They each have an address assigned. So as far as we know, there isn't any issue, or Mr. Flores would not have purchased them.
Yeah, the only issue I see is potentially the sewer, because looking at our sewer map, it does look like the only line we have in the area runs on that back property line. And so the house at the northwest corner, depending on how that service line runs, if it's all gonna be on that one lot, but it's all on one lot, if it crosses over into the adjacent lot, it's not like it's a deal killer. It's more of we would need to make sure that there were certain things done, like granting an easement across
Right.
the lot with the newer house.
Or
so that the lots on the other-
relocate that service line to where it,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have a little bit of a spacing issue there. I don't know how much space is between the house and the proposed lot line for the house on the the lot with 2 houses. I mean, you'd have sort of a little window there to thread a sewer line, but you could have a common service line that flows out to the main. Because the main, I know where the new house, it's gonna be going across the back property, the backyard.
right.
Back property line.
I mean, it could be subject to verification with the city on individual water and sewer service. And then, again, the OG&E is subject to when this happens, then they can make that application, and OG&E knows that they need to not have that power line going over the top of that other.
Believe me,
They'll know.
they'll
Yeah.
know.
Mark, I could see, since the other 2 houses were both built in 1946, presumably in close proximity to one another, I can't help but wonder if we might have another issue of service lines tying in together to go back to the main.
Well, and it could be, but the thing is they have an actual sewer they're being charged 3 separate bills, so.
Which I have no doubt of, because they've got 3 separate water meters, and that's what we
Yeah.
use to figure out the sewer. And I have no
So,
doubt
yeah,
that the
it
water
could be
line is
that, it
run.
could be that there's 3 separate water meters, you're getting separate bills for the sewer, but those 2 structures might be tied together. If that's the case, then they need to be separated, which
Okay.
is a plumbing exercise.
Okay,
So-
that's fine.
The main concern is if whether it's water or sewer, if it does cross the lot line, we want to make sure that certain documents are filed, if this is approved, that certain documents are filed so that whoever ends up owning in the future that lot, that front state, doesn't get into a legal dispute with the new lot about, hey, I need to get my service line fixed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it could potentially impact the garage, just depending on if that garage was built in the 80s.
Hopefully, the
It's
service
possible.
line isn't running under the garage,
Hopefully not.
so.
But if it is, we'll address it. It's fine.
And just for curiosity, whatever it's worth,
They shouldn't have.
the
split
house
these
on the
lots.
south
These lots would-
there, on the 2 lots, from his map, with the sewer map, it looks like that house is awfully close, maybe
Oh,
right
so these would've- these
on
would've
the
been
sewer
72.
line or near it.
It's close.
Close.
So very clear.
I'm seeing his sewer lines and looking at the survey, well, they're awful close together. Just
Yeah, I think where we were coming from was, if we do this, we can fix the lot situation problem, and then by pulling building permits for the renovation, then we need to make sure it's subject to plumbing inspection that can make sure that we have separate utilities serving all three
There's
structures.
the manhole. I'm actually not concerned about it. Where I'm at, Barry is literally standing on top of the manhole.
Look at there, and there's the house.
And it's good, well, here's the house. It
that's
looks like
the-
our sewer line's gonna be running parallel with those OG&E lines. So it's actually, Mark's map, I think, was pulling probably from county data along with putting our GIS data in on our sewer. But that manhole, because the manhole's connecting
Yeah.
as it runs.
It looks like it's
West to
within
east.
4 to 5 foot of the side of the house.
Well, the applicant hired the surveyor, and so they went and verified. They actually did a boundary survey and put pins so that we could actually have,
He's got an actual photograph here. Looks like that house is 4 or 5 foot right off the center of the sewer line.
Actually, it looks like our sewer line might be just off their property onto the next property, but within the easement.
It's hard to say, yeah.
Yeah. But it's definitely, unless our line takes a weird turn, it's not gonna be under the house.
So, up, down here on 42nd Street, we found sewer lines down there with that church we didn't even know existed when they went in to do a parking lot.
Mark, from a staff perspective, where are you at?
from a staff perspective, we would recommend that the commission approve the lot split as proposed. And then I would add the caveat that per the building, the renovation, the building permits, we need to verify that the utilities are separated under a plumbing inspection. And then my last comment, which is not an issue for us, but out of the several times we had your surveyor, they didn't put their survey stamp on these. When you go try to file it at the county, they're gonna want that stamp.
Okay,
So
get it.
that'll be fine, because we'll end up having that record, but yes, we'll need to have that.
Okay,
So-
I will get it from them.
I'd make a motion that we approve the recommended lot splits.
We need to close the public.
We got to close the
I'm
public.
sorry, I thought we did that.
Is there anybody from the public that wants to speak on the item?
Okay. So
Move to close the public hearing?
Second.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Curl,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Plumtree,
Yes.
Spriggs,
yes,
motion passed.
Anybody else on the question? Chair, you're ready to entertain the motion?
I'm ready to entertain your
I
motion.
can do that now.
Yes, you can do that now.
I thought we had already done it.
That's all right.
I recommend we make a motion that the city planner just referred to as, the lot split be approved as drawn, subject to the utilities all being, how did you say that, Mark?
Identified as individual to each of the structures.
Okay. I want that to be part of the motion.
And do we have to put on there that it's during the,
Building
Sure,
permit
permit.
review, yes.
okay. So.
During the permit review, just.
Yes.
I don't think they're gonna do a permit review. I think two of the houses already, you're not gonna get a permit, you're not gonna do anything to them, but paint them, if you're gonna do
He
that.
did cosmetic work that didn't require a permit, and then the one on the corner,
already got a permit.
we did already apply for a permit, which we haven't done the plumbing or anything on that one.
Haven't done any inspections.
No.
Well, they could actually come to you and ask for a plumbing
was
inspection.
going to ask
Yeah, they
that.
can, they can do a plumbing, a report on have a plumber come out and do that.
Yeah.
but
A
they're not
plumber
gonna-
or the city?
Well, not the city, well.
See, that's where it gets, and we would like to do it in a
would be-
timely
It
manner.
would be a plumber that you'd have
Okay.
to come out.
So if
And the
I,
utility people, plumber, electric.
Right.
If you could have your plumber come out and identify where the service lines are, and then that could be submitted back to the building inspector so that we could
Okay.
see that we have separate utilities.
okay, on
that-
like their letterhead, just saying, yes, they're separate, no
That would be
problems, and turn it in.
And where they are.
And where
And
they
a
are.
Drawing of where they're at.
Yeah,
Okay.
because they'll be able to
Dan-
run their line down through there, and they'll be able
Right.
to track them with
Right.
a
Dan-
device.
I'm sorry.
They could simply just draw it onto these drawings and you
Okay,
could submit
that would
that.
probably be
The
easier.
intent of my motion was that the spot split be approved, subject to the utilities being divided properly.
Located and divided.
Located and divided properly.
Second.
Now, if they can't do that, then the lot, you know,
Well, they can do it. I mean, that's-
They can
We've
do
got a
that.
second
I
to
mean,
the
yeah.
motion.
They can you can separate them if need be.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we just want to make sure because that was why he purchased them in the first place, so.
We good to vote?
Yes, we're good.
Corey?
Yes.
Sorry, I skipped Adams. Adams?
Yes.
Curl?
yes.
Downs?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Plumtree?
Yes.
Spriggs?
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Next week at 6 o'clock, not 7 o'clock. Tuesday here, 6 o'clock.
It'll be the same type of procedure, go over everything.
You guys run just the same, right?
Well, I guess we'll find out.
There's 3 of the people you'll be seeing
Okay.
next week.
And I'll try to have, I'm not 100%, but we'll try to get with our plumber to see if they can get something by then. That way we can get this concluded. because-
That would make it very easy.
Okay.
Right.
We will do our best. Thank you.
And thank you for trying to beautify everything around the neighborhood.
Yes, thank you very much.
Honestly, the one I'm most concerned about is that one at the northwest corner, because I'm guessing the utilities are all, that you've got a house between it and the utilities, so just trying to figure
The
out where that.
corner
The White
house?
House.
The White House.
Yes, figuring
And-
out how its water gets to the water main, how its sewer gets to the sewer main. Those are,
They could easily have those two connected.
And that's okay, right?
No, they need to have a separate sanitary sewer.
Not the two facing 42nd, but
Yeah,
the,
those two facing,
Need to
so
be
the two
separate.
facing State Street.
right, state,
Those are
yes.
the ones that are most concerned because they could be tied together. And because it's an Oklahoma City water meter,
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma City is metering you separate. Then they're just prorating the bill for your sanitary.
Okay.
There's not a meter physically on wastewater.
Okay.
So you could actually be having it flow through from one house to the other house to the city, to the main.
And if that is an issue, we can have it corrected.
Then have
and
that
then-
separated,
Okay,
yes.
and if the other two small ones are connected, it's not a problem because they remain on the same lot, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
I'm gonna bet you good money that the newer house, the one on 42nd.
Is separate.
Is separate.
Okay,
It's the two on State that I got a sneaking suspicion they've got one sewer line that when the builder built them both, probably just tied them together to tie into there, and we can figure that part out.
the ones that remain on one lot.
Correct.
That's
Yes.
not, is it, so
Yeah.
why is it an issue if they're on one lot? If they're,
What we need to really figure out honestly is whether or not, because it's, what I'm gonna suspect could have happened, built those two houses, put in the sewer line and water line without regard to the rest of the property.
Yeah.
Then came back almost 40 years later, built another house, may not even know that where this new lot line's gonna be has a water line going across it or has a sewer line going across it. If it's all confined within the new borders, that's a lot easier to deal with. But if it's gonna cross the borders, we can figure out a way to deal with that.
Right.
It just might mean granting an easement across the new lot
Okay.
to the other lot.
If you can do the identification process,
Okay,
then
you guys can help me
we
with
can
the
work
rest.
with you on the solution.
okay, that makes it a lot less overwhelming,
Yeah,
so, yeah.
not a deal breaker, just depending on where the line is, there might have to be other
Okay.
hoops to jump through, but
We can work
we
it
can
out.
figure it out.
Okay, we'll
We
do our
ju-
best
We
to
just
have
went
it.
through this with somebody else.
If those two houses were built together in 1946, they would have been under the old Baker water system that the city used to have, and practically anything would gone for the sewer too. There just wasn't much inspection or requirements back in those days.
Okay, and we just want guidance on how to do things right. You know, this is not something we deal with every day. So if you guys kind of direct us a little bit, we can get you what you need. So we'll do our best. Our goal is to just make it better, so.
Once the plumber identifies where the line is, the two lines are, we
We
will
can go
figure
from
out a way.
Sure, the staff will be
Okay.
happy to help you out.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Okay, last thing on the agenda today is use subject to review, discussion, and possible action to make recommendation to the city council concerning wrecker vehicles, equipment, any truck or motor vehicle designed to equip for use for the purpose of towing or removing wreck, damaged, disabled, or impounded vehicles located at 5932 Northwest 39th Street in Warr Acres and applicant is Ron Motashimi.
I don't believe he's here.
Did he have notice of?
He called and wanted to withdraw it. It was too late then. And then he called and said he would be here, and he's not here.
So, for the commission's benefit, by not appearing, the application can be deemed withdrawn. Do you know if he's intending to move forward with it?
That I don't know. I know he rented his car lot out, which was approved through the planning commission and city council. Now he wanted to do a record service, and he proposed 2 or 3 things, which was in the packet, but I don't know if he's going to proceed with it or not. Right now, he does not want to.
Well, and they only partially submitted the site plan and the improvements, so they never really finished what we recommended they do in order to be able to have multiple commercial uses. And then I might add that what they've added is there's existing gates that are on 38th Street, and when we had talked to them before, they were looking at, when they were doing the rest of this redevelopment of this site, they were not going to use those gates. Now I think that's what they're looking at wanting to do, so.
I think he wanted to propose a record service just to repo product that he sold and bring it back. Now, I know that has a tendency to grow, and that's why you kind of got it, but he don't want to pursue that anymore.
But the site plan application is not complete as it's submitted either.
Well, pursuant to 1954-040 subsection E of our city code, all applicants, either personally or through a duly authorized representative with authority to speak and take action on the applicant's behalf, are required to attend all public hearings on these subject to review. In the event the applicant or duly authorized representative agent does not personally attend any public hearing as set forth in the code, then the application shall be deemed withdrawn, and all fees tendered to the city shall be deemed forfeited.
Withdrawn.
Okay,
Told him that too.
I'm sorry?
I told him that too.
Okay.
okay.
So
So we consider that withdrawn.
this item is moot, as legally withdrawn.
If you guys remember, that's the old Camaro
Firebird.
parking lot that was always trouble for years and years.
Yeah, it's that old Camaro parking lot, yes.
And he came before us, and we heard it, and he hadn't done much more, in my opinion. He hadn't done what he said he's gonna do.
He tore that fence down, he moved all the cars out, he tore 2 buildings down and remodeled one.
It's a lot better than it was.
It was a lot, yeah, it was pretty bad shape at one time.
I mean, Gary was in there for how many years?
He was in there,
Long time.
20 years.
I mean, Barry would know
If
how
I
long
remember
that guy
right,
was
he was
there.
gonna
How long
lease
was
this
Gary
up.
there? Gary, Camaro guy. He
I
was there a
can't,
long
I
time.
can't remember him not being there.
Right, yeah, so.
That means it's been that was a long time.
That's a long time.
So it appears it may have been leased out like
He
he
had
originally
cars
intended.
there older than mine.
It's pretty close. He done now he also owns that watch thing. He also owns that dispensary. That's still a dispensary, that's still the watch. You know, like I said,
Right.
he's tore some stuff down. He's made it a lot better than what it was.
Okay.
And somebody did come in that he leased, that was his whole intention, auto dealership.
Okay. Any last comments from the staff?
Does Gary still own that?
That's no.
Gary doesn't own the lot.
His name's on the county assessor, but supposedly he does not own
Does
that.
not own it anymore.
But
so
his
he
office
owns
is
it
still
now.
in the building there.
No,
Did he move?
no building there.
I see him on 39th running that way all the time. I've known Gary for a long time.
No.
Just curious, it don't matter.
Okay, any last comments from the staff before we
So
close?
do we need to make a motion, no action, or what? Just
Nope,
nothing?
the minutes will reflect that it's
withdrew.
been deemed legally withdrawn.
Okay.
Any comments? Nope, nope.
I move that we close.
Second.
What was that?
To adjourn.
Wait a
Move.
minute, you hadn't done number 8 yet.
Yeah, we just jumped right to it.
He was hoping you
Oh,
wouldn't
did you have
notice.
questions?
I did ask,
Well,
Yeah, you technically asked about staff.
I asked staff, and then I asked right behind that if any of the commissioners had any additional comments.
May I speak on number 8?
It'd be interesting to watch somebody stop you.
If you must.
Okay, guys, in your packet, you had the minutes of the meeting we had with the problem with the dispensary on the Northwest Highway.
Yep.
I think all of you were involved in that.
Yes.
It's still there.
Still going on?
Nothing's really changed. What I would like for you guys to do is read the minutes in there, because you were here. Keep your mind of what took place, especially the stuff that he read, that he wrote, and that his opinion in there. Keep it in your mind. Pay particular attention to what Mark said in there, because I think you're gonna see it again. To me, that is big out-of-state money, and I'm not gonna say what kind, that's coming out, just a little pipsqueak town, we can do what we want. That's what I'm picking up on here now. And according to Mike, that guy Richard we talked to, has said he's disowned himself from any of that. I don't know that he has. We've seen no records of it or anything.
Well, the past couple of days, I have noticed that the dispensary was not open in the evening.
It's not open?
Okay, because when I drove by there was no lights, no cars.
And maybe not every night,
No, okay.
but the weekends, we're still getting loud music.
Okay, the weekend, the restaurant's still open, but I'm saying the dispensary portion of it,
The
I've noticed.
dispensary's open, the
far
sign
as you
right
know.
out there says open. I see the cars coming and going. I've been paying attention to it.
Okay,
You
well, I have too. Past couple of nights, I've not seen
The
anybody there.
music's still being played at night, but not as bad as.
What about
I thought.
Wednesdays? Wednesdays? Wednesdays are a big night too. Okay,
I haven't heard it during the week, I've heard it on weekends.
so they got a Wednesday night deal too, so they.
Do they?
yeah, do.
Remember, they did all that work and that construction after it was approved, never got a permit from Mike, did it after the fact, tried to come in the back door. I think it's
I
still
remember.
happening. All I'm telling you is, while it's fresh on your mind, review what's in the minutes, so you'll be kind of up to date in case it comes back up here. Because something's gonna have to take place. I don't know whether the city council's gonna do something, I don't know.
Well, maybe they'll start getting, citations like this last guy did.
I don't know. I'm just saying, if you read this, it helps you remember what happened because you were here, you know. And when it comes back, you'll have that in your mind. That's all I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Curl, are you good with us going ahead and adjourning?
Yeah.
You have a motion and a second.
Are we good?
Yes.
We don't usually do a roll call for closing.
No, we don't.